Hello, I'm Dan McLaughlin, and joined by members of the MLS for the Lou Group, ownership group, trying to bring MLS and soccer and excitement to the city of St. Louis. Carolyn Kendall Betts and Jim Kavanaugh. First of all, thank you for what you're trying to do for the city of St. Louis, whether it be soccer or not, and everything the Taylor family has done in so many different endeavors here in St. Louis, but specifically Jim and Carolyn, soccer. Let's start with this. Where are we right now with the soccer project? And Jim, I'll start with you.
We think we're making progress. We have done a lot of things, I would say, in the last couple of months. We brought the investor ownership group together, which is the Taylor Kavanaugh family, which we feel really good about. We went up and met with the MLS and Commissioner Garber and his executive management team. We've spent a lot of time back in St. Louis looking at the stadium site, which is the same stadium site that we looked at last time. We think it's a perfect site, right off Market, right next to Union Station. And right now we're in the process, and it's one of the most important pieces of moving things forward, is getting control of the land so we can go back to the MLS and start talking to them about the franchise and getting the franchise fee. So a couple of the things that we have in front of us are, one, securing the site and the land, and we're going through that process with the city, the state, and the Board of Aldermen. We think we're making progress. We have some things that we have to do. And then from there, once we get that secured, we want to go back to the MLS and literally move forward and say we want the franchise here. We need to demonstrate also to the MLS that St. Louis is ready for soccer. For MLS soccer, and that it's already ready for soccer. We already have a great following with St. Louis FC and all of, the amateur side of the game that we've demonstrated over the years in St. Louis University. But now it's time to bring MLS to St. Louis, and we need to demonstrate to the MLS that we are ready. And we've already tried this once, so this time we need to make it work. So that's where we are right now.
Carolyn, why do you think this will be successful?
I think first and foremost, the city's ready for this. There's a huge support in the region. I think everybody is so excited to have a professional soccer team. I think St. Louis is an international city, and we need to have an international sport. I think you have a very committed ownership group. I would tell you that I do feel we have the support from the city and the state. And so I think we just need to keep showing everybody just how prepared the city is, but more importantly, how passionate the city is for this opportunity.
When you got involved with the ownership group and the Taylor family, and all of a sudden the announcement hit, what was it like in your corners of the world in terms of the business people, family, friends, and they said, uh-oh, you guys are involved in soccer? What was that like for you?
It was really awesome, actually, because people were coming up to me and high-fiving me. They still are. And people are very thankful. Thank you for taking this on. My kids played soccer. I played soccer. The overwhelmingly positive responses were something that I don't think any of us prepared for. But somebody stopped me just the other day at a grocery store and high-five and go get this team and let me know what I can do to help. So I think business, neighbors, friends, colleagues, everybody's been really excited.
What do you hear about female ownership? Do a lot of the little girls that play soccer and give you a high five and say thank you?
They do. The follow-up question is, when are you going to get a women's professional team? So I politely remind them one team at a time. I think what's been really exciting is it's women of all ages. This is great way to send a message. I think the family women aspect is interesting too. So we've really enjoyed going down that path of saying, we want to be role models and you can do this. But certainly the excitement of the younger female soccer players has been pretty exciting.
How about for you, Jim, when the second go around now, what do you hear from the business community and those that, some of the business circles that you run in? What do people say to you?
Honestly, so many people are excited. If I looked at it on a percentage, I'd be 99.5% of the people that I've had any interaction with, whether it's social or it's social media platforms or it's face-to-face. It's been off the charts good. It's been incredibly positive, and there are different things. I thought we had a great ownership group that was committed last time, but this time it's it's that much better. You know, you couldn't create, I think, a better ownership group with the commitment and the roots that the Taylor family has. My family, growing up in St. Louis, commitment to the community, two families that have had very significant success in business that I think will parlay into the sports world. We're actually both invested in the Blues. We've seen St. Louis FC that we have here today, so we have experience in that. And just the response overall of having the local ownership that is committed to St. Louis, committed to doing what's right for our community and everybody that lives here, and also is incredibly passionate around the game of soccer, which is the most global sport in the world. So I think this would be an incredible missed opportunity for St. Louis if we don't make this happen.
I can't imagine what goes into saying, well, I just want to bring a franchise in any sport to a city. Can you give me an idea, Carolyn? So you make the announcement, what it's been like since that time, since that you were on the stage to what we're doing now, day to day, what has that been like?
It's been very exciting. You certainly find out something new every day, so you get a great education. We have been taking stadium tours, so we visited 4 stadiums, and I think one thing I've learned from that is we certainly need our stadium design to be very unique to St. Louis and represent who we really are. But I think it's every day does bring something new, but there again, I go back to the support we've had within our team, our ownership, but even from the city and the state, we seem to be working through things at a fairly good pace, because at the end of the day, we do have a deadline that we need to hit.
We're going to get to that in a moment. What did you take away from the stadiums? What did you like? What do you think would fit in St. Louis? Either one of you guys.
Carolyn, you kind of coined this a little bit, but what we have seen, we visited Red Bulls, New York City, or Jersey. We went out and visited the 2 stadiums out in LA, LAFC and LA Galaxy, and then Kansas City. And all of them had different things that were positives and negatives. I would say one of the things that we think is very important is that the building of the stadium is integrated with the surroundings of the stadium. So with the Union Station being next to it, we want to look at how do we make it a broader experience than just going to the game. So how does it integrate it into the overall Market Street from Arch to the park, and we're a big part of creating this neighborhood downtown. And then if you get into the stadium, we looked at it of creating these kind of different neighborhoods inside the stadium that create a different experience for the fans. So we've got some really crazy fans like these Luligans, you know, so we got to create an experience there. Then we have other areas of it that may be for, you know, kids or different experience. It could be ethnic groups that we have. So there's a lot of things that we're looking at creatively of how do we set up the stadium in a way that is very soccer centric, but also creates an off the charts experience for the different fan bases that we have.
I think a lot of fans too are curious, soccer, could it also, you know, couple for different things outside of soccer, also other soccer events minus the MLS experience? So what other events outside of soccer you could bring to St. Louis too, using that venue?
You know, certainly we could probably go after NCAA sporting events. We've talked to some of the ownership groups of these stadiums about, you know, our concerts, a good option, festivals. I think that we've gone through a list, and I think we would like to see, I had to throw a number out there. I think obviously the more events we can have, the better.
Right.
But certainly we have to keep in mind that our field needs to be tip-top, pristine shape. So I think balancing the soccer season with the added events will be an opportunity for us to learn more.
Yeah, the other thing I would just add to it that we would even look at would be events that would go on inside the stadium. So it could be small conferences or meeting rooms that we would have set up in the different venues inside of the stadium. And we'd even look at some of the different stadiums have done a pretty good job where we're knocking it around just in regards, could you create this kind of mini ballpark village kind of thing that's extended, integrated into the stadium. So it's part of the stadium that you open it up during game day, but when you don't have the game, you can still create this restaurant bar activity that would be there at the venue. We don't know exactly what that would be, but these are just some of the ideas that we're knocking around at this time.
Not to get too far ahead, but I will ask. The MLS, is there a minimum requirement for seats? Is there a maximum? Or what are you guys comfortable with in terms of seating with a stadium? What would that look like in terms, from a fan's perspective?
Yeah, I'll give you my 2 cents, Carolyn. You can add in. I mean, this is kind of a moving target a bit, but I would say their number one focus is this soccer-centric stadium that creates this unique experience for the soccer fan. And then we do want to design the stadium in a way that it's a multi-purpose, venue for other events, but soccer first. So the answer is most of the stadiums are going up, I would say, between 22 and say 27,000 seats. But if you look at, unique situation, which is not something we would do, Arthur Blank in Atlanta built a multi-purpose soccer football stadium, which for the most part MLS would not approve, but he spent $2.2 billion building this, but did it in a way that the stadium actually contracts to create a differentiated experience for the soccer fans, so down to like 22 or 24,000 fans. Strangely enough, when they actually opened up, with the MLS, they actually started filling the entire football stadium capacity. So if you look at like the playoff game they just had, I think they had 70,000 fans or so at that, and their average this year was like 52,000 fans in that stadium. So that being said, most of the stadiums are being designed for 22 to 27,000 fans, but in that situation like Atlanta, they built this, where it would contract, but they're literally filling the football stadium. So that's kind of where we would build a stadium that would be more like 22 or 24,000.
Absolutely. And I think one thing to keep in mind too is like Kansas City, for instance, they really know their market. Mm-hmm. So they have an option to add additional seating if needed, but they're not quite sure that that's the best way to maximize the spaces they have. So in LA, of course, is much different than a Midwest city. So I think starting on that side with potentially a phase 2 would also be something we really need to entertain.
And let's also, for fans that maybe don't know or haven't followed, exactly where the stadium would be. It's a blighted part of downtown, so either one of you can explain that as well.
It's currently a fill site for the Highway 40 project. There is 2 exits and ramps, I believe, but they're going to redo Jefferson Avenue, so those ramps are actually going to be shut down and torn out. So it's a great piece of land that could really, in my opinion, sort of complete that skyline view.
Great, be perfect. Let's talk more about the resolution that was filed by President of the Board of Aldermen, Lewis Reed. So, again, for fans, as we start to get some of the technical side of what's happening on the political aspect of this, how important was that? Where does that stand right now?
I'll give my 2 cents. Carolyn's been quite involved with this.
This is the fun part, guys.
Yeah, correct. No, and that's exactly what we were thinking, Dan.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Correct. And I can't tell you how much fun we're having with this. No, it's part of the process. It's, when you're doing things that involve the city, the state, MoDOT, LCRA, you've got land. So there are complexities. So I think Carolyn alluded to this earlier. Things are moving along, I would say, according to our timeline and plan. We'd always like it to be, to move without any hiccups. But we're going through the process right now. We think, overall, we believe we will get the support of the Board of Aldermen. There are also always, little gives and takes, in regards to the process and a bit of the negotiation. But from my perspective at a high level, this is such a good deal for the city. Now, again, you can look at it and say, well, you're biased, you're in this position. I am, but I think I'm pretty realistic too. I understand the numbers and I understand what we're committed to doing. We're committed as an investor and an ownership group. And this is a good city. And the only tax that would be levied on anyone would be if you go to the game. So the tax base that is created, we're not taking anything. The only thing we're taking is something that we create in this tax base. So if someone's coming to a game, there's no broad-based city tax. You come to the game, you will pay a tax on the ticket or some of the concessions that are there. And then as far as the site, the state would step up just like they would for NGA or anybody else to prep the land like they would for any other business that you would want to bring to your city to create positive economic activity. So we're going through that process right now with the Board of Aldermen, and we think we'll work through it, but there will be some gives and takes on that.
And Jim, just to follow up about President Reed, we asked him to go ahead and submit the resolution to the Board of Aldermen, primarily because of how excited he was the day of the announcement. And he's been a very big supporter of ours. And so we felt it sent a good message to have the president file the resolution. I also want to say thank you to the mayor and her office. They have been overwhelmingly helpful and, again, very supportive. And so we are very thankful to both President Reed and Mayor Cruzen.
Yeah, and to your point, Carolyn, I mean, this is a big difference from the last time out with, the president of the Board of Aldermen, with the mayor and the governor all supporting this effort, and seeing what a great deal it is for the city and the state. Is just it's a very positive position to be in. So we feel very good about that with their help moving things along.
Jim, you mentioned it. John Q. Public and you guys have stepped up private funding for this team and for MLS coming to St. Louis. The stadium is privately funded. The governor, everybody is behind it for the most part. Explain, though, to the taxpayer again. So, and this point needs to be, I think, hammered home, is the fact that the only taxes on this is that if you go to a game, that ticket will be taxed. Now, the question, I think, is where do those dollars go on that ticket with the taxes? So if you guys can maybe get into that a little bit and explain it a little bit further, and I think maybe that gives the general public a better explanation of how this works.
Yeah, if I looked at it in the most simplistic general terms as possible, any of these deals, it's a heavy lift from a financial investment perspective. So the numbers, if you're looking to get rich, this is not the investment to make as an investor or an owner. There's got to be other reasons you're doing this. So when we look at this, and we consciously looked at this, that we wanted to make this as easy as possible for the city and the state. And so we completely changed the process and the approach that we have to make this the only tax that would be, put on anything or anyone would be self-generated out of the stadium and this soccer entity. So there is no general tax that goes across, a use tax that goes across the citizens of St. Louis. It's just for those that come to the game. And if you think about it, there's a large majority of the fans that will be coming from outside the city that will generate a tax that will go to the city. So the city actually generates and gets a big part of the tax dollars that are created. And then there is a smaller portion of a tax that will be used to go into an escrow fund that will be used for future upkeep of the stadium. But we're also responsible as the investor ownership group of maintaining the stadium as we move forward. So again, I don't know how to put it. This is a very, very good deal for the city. And there's all kinds of other synergies, but if you look at just the specific investment and the tax dollars, the only dollars that will be paid out in tax dollars will be individuals that come to the game, pay for a ticket, our concessions, and there will literally be a tax base that is created from this entity.
And with that, the improvement fund, if you will, is done off the taxes of those that come to the game.
Correct.
Okay, that's been a misconception for many that are out there.
Correct.
The next question would be, who owns the stadium?
Well, we went ahead and followed typical stadium models. So the city would own the land and the stadium as well. However, the ownership group is actually purchasing the land and also paying to construct the stadium. And as Jim said, take care of the operation and maintenance and treat it just as if we owned the stadium ourselves. One of the bullet points in the resolution was to see if the city would enter into a triple net lease for up to 30 years with the ownership group so that we could say, we will take care of what needs to be taken care of. We just want to make sure that you are partnering with us in this deal, as has been the footprint for other stadiums.
And what's been the response to that?
Overall, the response has been good. There's obviously, you've got a broad base of individuals. It's a fairly large board, the Board of Aldermen. So there's individuals that have different opinions, but overall we believe that people understand the math associated with this and understand that this is a really good deal. So will there be some individuals that may not agree? You know, time will tell. But you know, from everything that we see from the governor to the mayor and a large portion of the Board of Aldermen, we think they'll be supportive as we work through this process.
Let's say everything goes to plan. How would the city of St. Louis, not just soccer fans, but John Q. public that could care less about soccer but cares about the city, how would the city benefit from MLS coming to St. Louis?
Well, I think that first of all, having anybody stay and visit the city is important, especially to the business owners around there. So hopefully they spend the night, they eat at the restaurants and bars, they meet up with their friends. So sure, I think the civic pride is definitely important, but I do believe that there are actual dollars that will benefit, and the region too, by having that team. We've talked about, you know, how do you create some really good rivalries with, you know, other teams around us. So is it Kansas City and St. Louis? Is it Nashville and St. Louis? Which we hope would bring fans from all over. And again, stay a night, you know, eat, drink, shop, be merry is what we're really hoping will happen.
Sure. No, I think there's so many benefits of bringing an MLS team to St. Louis. You know, there's not just one thing that makes a city great. There's a number of things, and from my perspective, St. Louis, we collectively, we need to be more progressive. And soccer, I believe, is one of those sports that is more progressive. It is the most global sport. It's a sport that is connected to the millennials in a more significant way than any other sport. And so if you look at the things that are going on downtown, if you look at $8 billion plus in construction, you look at things that are going on Arch to the Park, the site that we have right next to Union Station connected with Cortex and with Cultivation Capital, literally talking to individuals at some of these incubators that are talking about soccer, MLS will help us attract these emerging students, these millennials that we need to bring that are in the tech space to St. Louis and to get them to stay here. It's not the end all, but it's one of the things that are synergistic to everything that's going on downtown. So I believe St. Louis at a high level, political leaders, business leaders, community leaders, this is very important holistically for St. Louis, and it touches on so many different things that we're doing today. And if we do that, then I think we're gonna move St. Louis up.
Two-part question. The construction, if it happens, what would that mean for jobs in terms of how many? And two, I'm sure you've done it, but a business study of what a season might mean of MLS to the city of St. Louis financially, and either one of you can take that.
Well, I think certainly there'll be job creation. I think it's hard to determine exactly how many that number would be. But I think the other side to that too is, sure, we have construction of the stadium, but we have operations of the stadium too.
Sure.
So there's that constant pipeline of jobs.
Lyda Cruson recently tweeted out it would probably be close to $1 million, if not over $1.5 million to $2 million a year for the city of St. Louis, which would be huge. The aldermanic hearing is scheduled for 9 a.m. on November 28th. So this is huge. What are we hoping to hear about this and anticipate coming up? What do we know?
You know, we feel good about it. We feel good that, you know, at the end of the day, the proposition that we're bringing forward, the value proposition of bringing an MLS team is incredibly sound. I think the governor sees it, the mayor sees it. Hopefully the Board of Aldermen will also see it. So we're optimistic it'll go through.
So this question is for either one of you guys. What would you tell fans in St. Louis that support sports, but specifically MLS and soccer? What would you tell them? How would they get involved here? And Jim, you told me specifically, boy, the clock's ticking. It's 90 days. So what would you guys say to fans to get behind this and really support it?
They need to keep going to MLS for the Lou. Share it, tweet it, comment, look for updated videos. We're also going to put updated information about how you can come down to the aldermanic hearing or the day that the resolution goes for a vote. Certainly more supporters, the better. Buy the hats, buy the scarves, but it's really going to come down to just visiting that MLS for the Lou, sharing it with your friends, sharing it with your family, sharing it with your coworkers.
Yeah, I would also say that we just need their support in all different ways, whether, social media is probably the broadest, most impacting platform that we can demonstrate that kind of support. And trust me, MLS is watching that support. I would also say that if you just look at it, again, it's more than just the pure economics, and this will be good for the city and the city of St. Louis from an economic perspective. But this is a foundational thing for St. Louis. If you look at the Cardinals, you look at the Blues, we're probably more well known in St. Louis for the Cardinals and the Blues than anything. We believe that this MLS team will be one of those foundational things, and we don't look at it as being 1 or 2 years. This will be 25, 30, 40, 50 years down the road that you'll look at this as a foundational piece that will raise the bar on what we're doing here in St. Louis. The other thing is, we're looking to create this experience, and it's creating this emotional connection to our fans. If you look at the Cardinals, probably best in class in regards to the culture that they've created and the connection to fans that go far beyond just here in St. Louis. That's the same thing that we're looking at. I actually believe that the game of soccer, and if we look at it in our own kind of microcosm of things happening here with St. Louis FC, we have the St. Louis Hooligans that if you look at a quantity, probably some of the most passionate, well-connected, emotionally connected fans of any sport, and we want to propagate that in a very significant way, and we think that creates energy and synergies for the city. So we see this as being a foundational thing, and we want people to get connected today into what we're doing emotionally, and then that will continue to drive as we bring the team here.
How often do either one of you hear or talk to folks at the MLS, specifically Don Garber or members of his team?
I think we collectively do. There's all of us, myself, Carolyn will touch base with different executives at the MLS. Lee Broughton, who is driving a lot of our marketing and advertising and kind of our social connections here, are connected almost daily with what they're doing. I personally believe the MLS is very excited about what we're doing, but they want to see us get through the Board of Aldermen, secure the land, and then really probably bring them out here for a visit and demonstrate, the energy and the support that's behind what we're doing.
Every time that I've heard feedback that we've called, they've been very accommodating, very helpful, and almost a little excited to help us out. And so, but I feel that's a theme through the MLS. After meeting with some of the ownership groups we met with, these ownership groups were wonderful. They were very transparent, they were very helpful. We could ask any question, they had an answer, and very supporting and encouraging, and coming back and reflecting on those trips. You sit back and you kind of think, wow, this is a group of people I would really genuinely enjoy working with. So I think from not only MLS headquarters, if you will, but also the ownership groups as well, again, the support's been overwhelming.
So final question about the application in terms of timetable. When is that? How does that work? What do you have to do? What are the steps for that application? What's the next step with MLS specifically?
So my view, Carolyn, is that, and what we've talked about is we need to secure the land. Once we secure the land, then I believe we control our own destiny. It's up to us then to demonstrate to the MLS we have the land, we have an incredible investor ownership group that is committed, deep roots in St. Louis, very committed to the community, very passionate about the game of soccer and the growth. And then we need to negotiate with the MLS that we are the right city and the right place for the next franchise. And I think we'll make that happen. We just have to secure the land, and then I think it's up to us to go execute on our plan.
I think the community involvement piece is huge too. I think the MLS for the LUDE alone, and just some of the statistics that are coming back from that. But again, the sale of all these, it's just going to make that application even better. And in my opinion, it's going to be very hard for the MLS, I think, to turn us down, given how strong that application will be. But to Jim's point, we want to make sure we go in with the land piece somewhat secured, just so we can say, again, we've got it, we understand what you're asking for, and we delivered that.
Final thing, this is your chance to, whether you want to look into a camera or not, but tell me, however comfortable you are, but what would you say to the average fan out there, whether they like soccer or not? Why is this so important for St. Louis? What would you tell them if they were sitting right here? I'll start with you, Jim.
this is foundational to St. Louis. As I mentioned before, like the Cardinals, like the Blues, you know, St. Louis, that is a big part of what St. Louis is all about, and you know where we rank, you know, throughout the United States. And I believe that it's also a very important piece of the cultural and emotional connection to the citizens and the people that live here in the city of St. Louis and, you know, the surrounding counties. So we believe that this is going to be a big part of what this MLS team is all about. It's going to be a foundational piece of St. Louis, not just in the next couple of years, but for the next 30, 40, 50 years. And we're going to look at this as helping propagate, you know, the city of St. Louis. And we also believe that, again, I've mentioned this, that creating this incredible experience and connection and loyalty to the city of St. Louis through this game of soccer and this sport, with the example of like the Luligans that so passionately support St. Louis FC, we're just going to take that and propagate that and generate that in a bigger way. So we think this is much more than just, you know, bringing an MLS franchise. We think this is foundational to the city of St. Louis.
There's such a great resurgence going on from the city, and we're attracting talent from all over the world. And I think that in order to continue that resurgence, but also to become a world-class international city, however you look at it, from citizens, you look at it from businesses, you look at it from opportunities outside of businesses, we need to have a soccer team, because I think that's what's going to make people feel at home, because it's something that they know and they understand, and they want to be a part of a team. And so I think that whether you're a fan or not, having an MLS team will just continue to push this city in a direction it needs to go, and it's ready to go.